Hello, welcome to your next social influence lesson. Today we're moving on to look at minority influence and how that causes social change and how it has caused social change throughout the years. So your title today is Minority Influence. You will need, as always, your textbook, your notes and your pen to write with. So just 4 little questions as a little starter and to remind you of social influence and everything that we've covered so far. So 1 is to name 5 factors affecting obedience. Number 2, I want you to list 4 of Milgram's variations. 3, list 3 of Ash's variations. And 4, name 2 types of conformity. So please try and do this without looking in your textbook or your notes. And then if you absolutely have to, then refer back to check your answer. So pause me now and have a go. Okay, so there's lots of things that you could have put for number 1 because we've looked at a lot of factors that affect obedience. So you might have said things like uniform, proximity, location, the authoritarian personality, agentic state, social support. 4 of Milgram's variations. So one of them relates to the proximity one. So there was the proximity one where he made the researcher give the participant the instructions through the telephone, and obedience dropped in that one. There was the one where the participant had to put Mr. Wallace's hand onto the shop plate. Then there was the rundown office variation. There was the one, the social support one, where they had 3 teachers instead of 1. There's others that you could have put there as well. The 3 variations of Ash's research were group size, unanimity of decision, and task difficulty. And 2 types of conformity. So we have identification, internalization. You could also put compliance. Remember, if you put normative or informational, that's completely wrong because that's an explanation rather than a type. Okay, so lesson objectives for today. We're going to outline and evaluate 3 aspects of minority influence, including consistency, commitment, and flexibility. And we're going to look at a key study, which is by Moscovici. Okay, before we do anything else, I want you to have a go at this. So an investigation was carried out with a group of UK students comprising 3 male students and 3 female students. I want you to have a go at doing the same investigation. So as an orientation task, each individual in the group was asked to ask the question below that I'm going to show you in a minute. 2 of the students, called Chloe and Maisie, answered correctly. What do you think the answer is? So if a rounders bat and a ball together cost £1.10 and the bat is £1 more than the ball, how much does the ball cost? Does it cost 5p or does it cost 10p? So just pause me now and have a think about what the answer might be. So the answer is 5p. That's what Chloe and Maisie put. They were correct, the only ones who got the question correct. Did you get it right? The way to work it out, is basically the bat has to be £1 more expensive than the ball. So if the ball is 10p, and then the bat has to be £1.10. So if the bat is £1.10, then you plus the 10p from the ball, which makes it £1.20. So that doesn't work. But if the ball is 5p and the bat is £1 more expensive, then that's £1.5 plus 5p, which equals £1.10. So hopefully you got that right. I'm going to ask you a few more questions now. Again, this research was conducted on the same 6 people. The 2 students who got the previous question correct saw this slide as green. The 4 others saw it as blue. Which one fits closer to your point of view? The slide is more green than blue, or the slide is more blue than green? So just write either blue or green, and we're going to see another one. So same thing, Chloe and Maisie again saw it in green, whereas the other 4 students see it in blue. What do you see it as? More green than blue or more blue than green? Same thing again, Chloe and Maisie see this as green, the other 4 students see it as blue. What do you think? Is it more green than blue, or is it more blue than green? And just write down your answer. Okay, so now what I need you to do is to number these discs. Sorry, no, the discs are already numbered. Categorize them into either blue or green. So number 1, do you think that goes into the blue or the green category? And then do the same for 2 to 8. So just pause me now. Okay, and keep those results aside because they'll be important at a later part of the lesson. Okay, so what is minority influence? Everything so far that we've done about social influence, we've looked at how a majority influences the behaviour of others. So we looked at conformity, compliance identification, and internalization. That's all about how the majority influence the minority to behave like them. So now we're going to look at how the minority actually influences the majority, which leads to social change. Minority influence is a form of social influence where a persuasive minority changes the attitudes and behaviours of the majority. The example in the picture is of environmentalists. So not that long ago, environmentalists were very few and far between. And then they kind of came out and started to speak out and said, you know, plastic's killing the earth, we need to stop global warming, let's cycle to work more, let's stop deforestation. And eventually they have been very persuasive in seeing the majority see those views and internalize those views. So when a minority influences a majority, it involves a conversion process. So the majority has to be converted to their point of view. And in order to do this, the minority have to be consistent and completely committed to the approach. People then have to scrutinise the message itself and decide why the minority hold this position. So where are they coming from? What is the rationale behind their thoughts? Is it worth spending time over this, or is it just something that we ignore? And there's lots of examples of minority influence as well as environmentalists. There's the LGBT community, there's the Black Lives Matter movement, and we're going to look at some examples over history of civil rights movements as well. So when conversion to the minority happens, the results tend to be deeper and longer lasting as people have internalized the minority's point of view. So this is different to when a majority influences the minority, because sometimes it can just be a shallow belief that goes away over time or goes away once we're no longer part of that group. However, when a minority influences, it is a conversion. It's a conversion to that point of view or that behaviour, which means you have internalized it as a type of conformity. Okay, so I want you to create a mind map of examples of minorities that have changed society. So I've just given you a few on the previous slide. I want you to try and think of as many as you can. So just pause me now and have a go at that. Who are these individuals and why are they famous? You should know all of them, hopefully. If not, let me tell you. The first gentleman on the right is, of course, Nelson Mandela. He was the president of South Africa, and he was an anti-apartheid revolutionary. He was the first ever black head of state and the first ever elected in a fully representative democratic election. So he was a big deal. Then the lady in the middle is Rosa Parks. She was an American activist, and after the famous incident of her refusing to give up a seat on a bus, it led to the Montgomery Bus Boycott, and it was really pivotal situation that happened that led to a lot of change in America. And then we have Martin Luther King, who was a Baptist minister and activist as well. He was a very famous spokesperson and leader of the civil rights movement until his unfortunate assassination in 1968. What do all of these individuals have in common? What characteristics do you think they had? I want you to pause me and think about that. Okay, so all three of them were consistent, they were committed, and they were flexible. And all these three things are the key characteristics that lead minority influence to convert the majority. So what we need to do from the definitions is to match them with the key terms consistency, commitment, and flexibility. So just pause me now and have a go at doing that. The first one was commitment. So commitment is when a minority must be dedicated to their cause. The greater their dedication, the greater their influence. So they must never stray from what they believe in. The greater the sacrifice that they put forward, the more committed they will be seen as. The next one was flexibility. So although a minority really does need to be consistent, that's really important, they must also show a willingness to compromise. So they're not going to bring about the change that they want 100% straight away. So they need to compromise sometimes when expressing their opinions. And a minority also has to be consistent. They need to be stable with their opinion over time, and there must be agreement amongst the members of the minority. So all of the minority must be fighting for the same thing, or else there's no consistency and it's less likely to work. The earlier activity that we did with the blue discs and the blue squares, that was basically a replication of Moscovici et al.'s study. And he wanted to investigate minority influence. And in Moscovici's study, there was a consistent minority, such as Chloe and Maisie in our version, and they did actually influence naive participants to choose more of the discs as being green in the final part of the study. Have a look at your results of how you categorized the green and the blue discs. Did the minority have an influence on you? Because I know when I did it, I did categorize more into the green than I did the blue. Moscovici had three conditions, and within these three conditions he had two confederates, so that they knew the aim of the study, they were working with Moscovici, and he had four naive participants. So in the consistent condition, the two confederates, when shown a picture of a blue square, so they were all in the same room, they also saw these blue slides, the confederates said that the blue square was green 36 out of 36 times. And this caused the majority to say green 8.42% of the time. In the inconsistent condition, the minority only said green on 2/3 of the trials, and this decreased how much influence they had on the majority. So it was only 1.25% in the inconsistent condition. And then they did a control condition just to see if people would mistake blue for green in a normal condition. So the Confederates didn't say green at all, they said blue consistently in this condition. I want you to read Moscovici's study in your textbooks and then answer the following four questions. 1. Moscovici has been criticised for using a biased sample. Why is this an issue? And who were his sample? 2. Outline the key findings of the Moscovici study. What did he find? 3. Which of the three factors of minority influence does Moscovici provide support for and why? And 4. Moscovici's study was a lab experiment, and what is a weakness of this? So I'm not going to give you the answers in this lesson because I want you to go away and actually answer for yourself and not just wait for the answers to be put on the next slide. So have a go at doing that. Pause me now and we will go through it next lesson. Your last task is I want you to use the knowledge that you've gained from learning about minority influence. And obviously, sorry, you can't work with a partner. So just working on your own I want you to campaign, so to design a campaign to get the whole class revising on Christmas Day. So currently it's just you and me against the rest of the class because we're the only ones who think this is a great idea. Disclaimer, I do not think this is a good idea. It's a terrible idea. But anyway, we're going to use our knowledge that we've gained of minority influence to try and convince the rest of the class of this. So use your textbook, use the notes that you've made on consistency, commitment, and flexibility, and then say where and how you will apply the consistency idea into the campaign, how you'll show commitment to the cause, and 3, how you demonstrate flexibility in the case. There's not really a right or wrong answer in this. I just want to get your ideas of how you could potentially do this. And yes, so pause me now, and then I'll give you some of the ideas that I came up with of how you could do it. So to campaign for revision on Christmas Day, you would have to use the 3 key characteristics of minority influence: consistency, commitment, and flexibility. And these are just some ideas that you could have put. With consistency, you might meet to plan a message of the campaign. So me and you, imagine you had a partner if it was a normal school day, and we would all use the same PowerPoint to ensure that we were all consistent and we'd all agreed on the benefits of the plan. Because remember, when a minority is consistent, then the message that you're delivering is going to be more impactful and more and better received by the majority. Then we have to show our commitment. So we might dress up in Christmas outfits for the next lesson to draw attention to the campaign, or we show templates of the note to go in Christmas cards. Happy Christmas to you. Sorry, I will not be in touch on the day. I really want to do well in psychology, so will be glued to my revision notes. That's showing that you are committed to the cause so that the majority know exactly what you plan to do on Christmas Day. And then flexibility. You could be flexible in saying that maybe changing the hours of the day that you're going to be revising. So you could like have some flexibility there and say, okay, you're allowed to open some presents and then revise from this hour to this hour. You might have put completely different answers to this, which is fine. The key thing that I wanted you to do here is to really understand the key concept of minority influence, which is consistency, commitment, and flexibility, and how we can apply this to quite a trivial thing that you would obviously never campaign for. Okay, so that's it for today's lesson. As always, please post your notes onto Teams. Any questions, please let me know, and I shall see you soon.